Second aspect of the tradition is I grew up in a justice-centered, ecumenical, interfaith community that came out of the freedom movement. What does that mean? It means that the churches, ministers, activists who were part of the freedom movement all worked together, preached for each other, did programs together. And it was kind of a small community, a faith community. And I assumed that all faith communities operated in that manner. So it was my assumption that every faith community was centered on transforming their neighborhood. It was my assumption that every faith community functioned under embodiment. When I say embody, it means embodying the gospel. It was not knocking on a door and saying, do you accept Christ? It was, let me demonstrate Christ's love through the way I live and the love that I demonstrate in the community. If you ask me about Christ, hey, I will share with you, but my first job is to communicate the love, the compassion, and care for those who are hurting. The primary piece being, can we alleviate suffering? Our role is to alleviate suffering. The motto of our church was to teach, preach, and practice the unconditional love of Jesus Christ. I remember it to this day from when I was small, to teach, preach, and practice the unconditional love of Jesus Christ. That was our motto. That was our vision. And so I had the assumption that that is the way the churches operate. That affected my preaching. So I thought the connection to South Africa and the anti-apartheid movement, that was to be a part of what the church's role shall be. I assumed that the church's role in alleviating suffering was to build an alliance with communities, whether or not they were Christian or not, but if they were suffering, then the church's role was to assist in alleviating that suffering. So that helped shape my shape the way in which I preach, and then witnessing from Sunday to Sunday, from revival to revival, people who came out of the movement, who were doing the revivals, who were preaching on Sunday, who had this same ethic, who connected with these same ideals. The community you grow up in has an effect on your preaching. So I want you to write online. I want you to write a few paragraphs. This will be after class, about how your tradition has influenced you, your understanding of preaching. Give it some time to think about it. Whether you are from a strong denominational tradition, maybe you are from a tradition that is non-denominational, but how is that influencing you? You may need to ask some questions from people in your family. You may need to ask your questions of mentors or some leaders in your faith community to get a greater understanding. But we have ideas that are embedded in us that we have never named. And that's what I want to share with you. And that's what I want you to discover to better understand the framework that you come out of as a preacher. Now, as we move along in this strange vocation of preaching, we must understand another aspect, that not only that flunk is an ethic that will teach us to fly, not only that we must understand our particular traditions, but this other idea is that preaching is dangerous. Why? It's dangerous because it can speak truth to power. We're going to have a whole section in reference to prophetic preaching. But it's dangerous because of our ego. Preaching can easily become a drug where you are seeking affirmation from people. And when you do not get the affirmation, you can move into depression. This is why it's dangerous, and there must be strong spiritual rooting before you move into the element of preaching. The other aspect of this danger is we've got to learn ourselves. So here is an assignment that I'm giving everyone. You are to go to a website entitled 9types.com. Let me say it again. 9types.com. Dr. Fowler will upload. It's just a simple link. It's the number 9, then the word types.com. This is an Enneagram test. This Enneagram shares your personality type, and there is a free test on this website. You answer all the questions, and it'll give you information on whether you're type 1. It's just, again, a personality type on how you flow from type 1 to type 9. A type 1 person is more of a perfectionist, someone who works very well alone. People jokingly say that accountants are usually type 1s. To type 9, who are people who are caregivers and peacemakers who can see both sides of an argument. They are the individuals that when there's a family conflict, they're the ones who are bringing people together. There are the type 4s who are the artists and get their energy out of creativity. There's the type 5 who are the people who observe. When I say observe, they're analytical on one level. They have to gather information and knowledge, and they gain confidence, and also their spirit is at peace when they're able to gain information in a situation, especially if there's a crisis. Type 5s are the people you want around you. If a fire breaks out, if there's an explosion that happens, they're usually very calm because they can look and see the exits are here. You're going to be all right. We're going to make our way outside. They're usually 1 or 2 steps ahead of other people. It's that type 5 personality. So there's all these different type of personalities that you'll run across, and so you can just read through the website. But this will be helpful because there is some danger in preaching. The ego, seeking affirmation, wanting into depression, because you're in this human endeavor. So learning about yourself will be helpful so that you will not move into the category of egocentrism and seeking affirmation, which can take you away from your real call. The other aspect is that we have to understand the foundations of sermon development. And we're going to talk more about that later. But when I say foundations of sermon development, learning your particular tradition will so help you on so many levels in reference to sermon foundations. So let me give you all this information about the different types of sermons that you'll run across. This is in no way a definitive list, but we're going to be looking at and understanding some inductive sermons, story or narrative sermon construction, celebration and trans-consciousness, looking at what moves are in sermon construction, and looking at the jazz framework of sermons, the mystic aspect of sermons, poetic, and expository. Now you should have those: inductive, story, and or narrative, celebration, trans-consciousness, the moves of sermons, or having moves in sermons, the jazz framework of sermon construction, the mystic poetic, and expository. Now, we will not go into detail in reference to all of these, but these are different aspects of sermon construction and the way you may approach a message that I want you to be some degree familiar with on the general level. So inductive, story, and our narrative. And you can really, they can be two. There can be story and there can be narrative. They're really two different things, but I use story and or narrative. Celebration or celebratory / transconsciousness. Moves is another form of the utilization of moves that comes from David Buttrick. The jazz framing of sermon construction. That's something that I've actually developed. Mystic structure of sermon or contemplative. That would be Howard Thurman and Richard Rohr. The poetic, that would be Gardner Taylor and Teresa Fry Brown from Emory. And one of the most popular being expository. And these are not hard lines. They can all move together in a variety of ways. You can be poetic and expository. You can be expository and narrative. You can be narrative and jazz-centered. You can be inductive and also mystic. I mean, they all move together, but I want you to have those ideas on your plate. More than likely, most of us come out of traditions where expository, narrative, and transconsciousness sermons, along with poetic, seem to be the largest number of sermon types and sermon construction. Not saying that that's everyone, but those four usually more than likely are the largest types. So this vocation is strange also because it's dangerous. It's strange because there's a variety of ways to do it. And there are a variety of cultural traditions that approach preaching in different ways. And so we do not want to simply just elevate one way. We also want you to experience the variety of ways in which one may preach. And so the fundamental objective, as I began, that you will enter this course and you will become comfortable with you. That your voice has been attuned in such a way, like an instrument, that it will reach the heart and ears of a particular set of people. And developing your voice and being comfortable with it and being authentic in who you are will be the greatest gift and blessing, not only to others, but it'll be an incredible gift to yourself. So I'm going to end this portion, part 2 of this lecture there. You have some assignments that we will load up onto the web. We want you to take that 9 types test, and then you have your reading assignment. Now, you have already read Fred Craddock in terms of that call to preach and the narrative aspects. I will include in our next lecture a little bit of Craddock, talk a little bit about him, but then we'll be moving into the next section of our course. But what we need to do now with the discussion that we have had, we need you to participate in that 9 types survey. That survey is going to help you understand yourself. And what we would like you to do after you take that, we want you to go ahead and I think there's a space you can post on Canvas to say, hey, I'm a 1 or I'm a 6. This is what I learned about myself. I'm a number 9. And usually it's pretty spot on in reference to the type of personality that we may be flowing with at this moment in our life. So thank you all. very much. I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Fowler.